The honourable member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to add my voice to this important debate on the ending of the Long Gun Registry Act. With this legislation, we propose to finally remove a measure that has had no tangible benefit to keeping Canadians safe. Rather, it's added unnecessary paperwork and placed an unfair burden on law-abiding citizens who've done nothing wrong besides having the audacity to own a rifle or a shotgun. The Long Gun Registry has played a divisive role in pitting rural Canadians against urban Canadians. It has been touted as a safety measure that will protect police, even as we hear from police themselves that it's unreliable and inaccurate. It's been said to save lives, even though no one has ever presented compelling evidence to that same thing. Rather, Mr. Speaker, we've heard directly from Canadians and from witnesses who have appeared before a committee with two clear messages. One, it is a waste of taxpayers' money, and two, it is ineffective. Let's consider the first problem, that of the cost of the registry. Here we have a registry that was originally put in place in 1995 with a promised price tag of around $120 million for startup costs. Most of this was supposed to be covered by registration and licensing fees. In her 2002 report and the follow-up 2006 report, the Auditor General of Canada found that the costs were nowhere near that. She did a thorough review of the cost escalations in her review and estimated that the cost of the Canadian Firearms Program was many hundreds of millions of dollars by 2005. Mr. Speaker, this is an affront to Canadian taxpayers. In a media story in 2003, the Auditor General put it this way: the issue here is not gun control, it's not even astronomical cost overruns. What's really inexcusable is that Parliament was kept in the dark. And even more than that, in 2004, Mr. Speaker, the CBC reported that the cost of the Long Gun Registry was well in excess of $2 billion. Must be true, then. Is it any surprise, Mr. Speaker, that these revelations were met with renewed calls to end the Long Gun Registry? The answer, of course, Mr. Speaker, is a resounding no. Mr. Speaker, despite the attempts of Long Gun Registry supporters to convince Canadians that the Long Gun Registry is saving lives, there is simply no compelling data to back that claim up. It is clear to many millions of Canadians that the Long Gun Registry is both wasteful and ineffective. It is for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, that our government has worked tirelessly since coming into power to end the Long Gun Registry. If we were to believe the naysayers, Mr. Speaker, we might imagine that eliminating the Long Gun Registry will lead to rampant gun crime and Wild West shootouts in the street. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, we already have many tough and effective measures in place that are helping to prevent gun crime. There are three key approaches to cracking down on these violent crimes. First of all, and something that will not change with Bill C-19, is a strict licensing system that is already in place. To lawfully possess a firearm, every Canadian must be in possession of a valid firearms license. Anyone who wants to acquire a firearm must undergo a required Canadian firearms safety course. And Mr. Speaker, this is not a quick online quiz that you can take over the internet. Excuse me, rather, it's a comprehensive 10-hour classroom course that gives students a working knowledge of the safe handling of firearms. It also ensures they are familiar with the laws and procedures regarding firearm ownership. As part of this license application, all individuals are also screened to ensure that there is no reason to believe that the public will be in danger if that individual gains a license. This includes checking the individual's criminal record if he or she has been prohibited by law to own a gun, or if they pose any general danger to society. These are reasonable measures that have been widely accepted by gun owners across the country. As noted, Mr. Speaker, none of that will change with the legislation we're discussing today. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we feel so strongly about the effectiveness of the gun licensing system that we've invested $7 million annually to improve the screening process for first-time firearms licensees. We believe that this is helping to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have them. Our second area of focus in gun control is the work we've done to ensure those who commit gun crimes face stiff sentences. We have passed legislation that sets out mandatory minimum prison sentences for serious gun crimes, as well as reverse bail provisions for serious offences. We've put in place laws that target drive-by shootings that demonstrate a reckless disregard for the safety of others. There is now a mandatory minimum sentence of 4 years in prison, up to a maximum of 14 years for these crimes.
That's good.
That minimum sentence goes up 5 years if the individual committed the act on behalf of a criminal organization or used a restricted or prohibited handgun or automatic firearm in progress of the crime. These are tough measures, Mr. Speaker, and they send a strong message that those who commit violent gun crimes will face severe consequences. We've also taken decisive action to make sure that we have the appropriate level of police officers to enforce these tough laws. And we've invested in significant funds into helping prevent crime through the programs like Youth Gang Prevention Fund and a National Crime Prevention Strategy. And I'd like to say, Mr. Speaker, we've invested quite a bit in my own city in Hamilton, Ontario, to make sure we keep youth from crime.
Excellent.
Finally, the third approach has been to strengthen our borders to stem the flood of illegally smuggled firearms from the United States. We know that the majority of firearms smuggled into Canada are coming across the 49th parallel. Our efforts to crack down on this illegal activity have taken many forms, including the deployment of the integrated border enforcement teams at strategic points along the border, as well as testing new and innovative cross-border policing models, such as ShipRider, to combat illegal smuggling along our borders. ShipRider pilot projects, which involve specially trained and designated RCMP and U.S. Coast Guard officers jointly crewing marine vessels to enforce laws on both sides of the border, have proven to have a direct and measurable impact on cross-border criminality. Given their success, the Prime Minister and the U.S. President have announced, in the context of the shared vision, that we would look to regularize ShipRider operations as well as leverage the ShipRider concept to land-based operations. By working closely with our U.S. counterparts, we can better identify, interdict, and prosecute those individuals who attempt to smuggle firearms into our country. Mr. Speaker, in light of what we know about the long gun registry, we're faced with two choices. We continue with the status quo, pouring good money after bad into a long gun registry that's ineffective and wasteful, or we do what responsible parliamentarians should do, consider the facts. In summary, I believe there are 3 points we must all consider. One, this long gun registry has cost Canadian taxpayers an exorbitant amount of money.
Too much money.
Far more than they were originally told when it was put in place in 1995. Two, many police officers are telling us that the long gun registry is not reliable and is full of errors and has done nothing to keep Canadians safe. Three, there's no statistic showing us that the long gun registries had any impact in terms of saving lives or deterring individuals from committing violent gun-related crimes. This isn't a matter of partisan or personal views. It's a matter of common sense, Mr. Speaker. The long gun registry has not worked since its inception in 1995. It's not working today. It will not work in the future. I ask all honourable members to stand up for law-abiding Canadians and vote to end the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry once and for all. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, now, a lot of myths have been raised here by the Conservative Party, but I want to get to the facts. On May 2nd, last, 93.5% of Quebecers decided not to place their trust in the Conservative government nor in the Conservative Party during the election, for a host of reasons. With their obstinance about abolishing this registry, the government has said to the Quebec government, which is unanimous behind it, that's a situation. So don't try and tell us that there are political games being played by the opposition here. It's a blatant disrespect for Quebec and for the government of Quebec, this idea of abolishing the firearm registry. So I would like to ask my Conservative colleague, why not be reasonable? Why not agree to the amendments by the NDP that will maintain the registry, but at the same time removing the problems faced by hunters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to assure the honourable member, if he looks at the Blues, that I never said anything about political games. I said it was a nonpartisan issue, and it absolutely is. I mean, this is about the safety of Canadians, and it's about treating law-abiding citizens with respect and dignity. That's what it's all about. The registry is the data, Mr. Speaker, and so if we say we're going to get rid of the long gun registry, then we're going to get rid of the data. That's simply it. However, I did mention in my speech that we are very much for the licensing registry that's already there, the licensing process. We've invested more money into that, and that data is very accurate.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Honourable Member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westboro. I wonder if in his speech he'd neglected the evidence that has been put forward by the emergency room physicians of Canada, who tracked an absolutely empirical data connection between the time in which the long gun registry has been in effect and a reduction in suicides involving long guns. That seems to me to be very convincing evidence as it comes from the emergency room physicians themselves. And I'd ask the member for his comment.
The Honourable Member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westdale.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding at committee there was an emergency room physician that was there, and there's no compelling evidence that was presented at committee regarding any increase or decrease as far as when the long gun registry came into effect. So I think I've made it very clear, Mr. Speaker, throughout my speech that there was no hard data, frankly, Mr. Speaker, no anecdotal data as well, that would say that the long gun registry has made Canadians safer. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I was in the Public Accounts Committee when the Auditor General in 2006 presented her report. And at that time, she was saying the accuracy of the data was to a point where it could actually endanger people. And when I heard today from my colleague, 4,400 firearms that were stolen, re-registered.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for my colleague for giving his great speech there. And my question is for him to expound upon the fact that even when the gun registry is abolished, every gun owner will still have to go have a PAL. Every gun owner will still have to have a hunting license, so that things can move forward in that respect. And what I'd like the member to expound upon is just that all of these safeguards are still in place and still will have a lot to do for the safety of all Canadians.
Short answer from the Honourable Member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Westdale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and yes, I can assure my honourable colleague that that is still in place. And I mentioned as well in my speech, Mr. Speaker, that this test isn't something that you just cruise through. Not everybody passes this, these tests, and it's quite intense, and it really makes sure that people know exactly what they're dealing with, how dangerous a firearm is, and make sure that they know how to handle it. They also know the municipal, provincial, and federal laws that govern them as well.